Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, F&B Packaging Safety Measures in Times of COVID-19, organized by Africa Food Manufacturing in partnership with the World Packaging Organization, the Chamber of Printing and Packaging Industries, and ProPak. My name is Medhat Chawi, Sales Manager at Informa Markets, and on behalf of Africa Food Manufacturing and ProPak MENA team, I'm honored to be the moderator of today's session. As you are aware, the current impact of COVID-19 has presented challenges that prevent us from coming together as an industry in person until restrictions are eased. Nevertheless, we're committed to supporting the recovery of the business in the food and beverage industry. Therefore, Africa Food Manufacturing, featuring FI, Africa, and ProPak MENA, the one-stop point for food and beverage professionals in Egypt and the wider region, will be organized in accordance with Informa's all secure health and safety standards, providing the highest levels of hygiene and safety from the 11th to 13th of October 2020 at CICC. Today, we're fortunate to be joined by a remarkable lineup of regional and international packaging industry leaders who will share their extensive knowledge and provide insights about the latest trends in the food and beverage packaging safety measures to be applied during a pandemic. And now to the agenda. First, I'd like to remind you that we have only an hour for today's session, so the speaker will have around 10 to 15 minutes presentation. We'll start off with Professor Pierre Peinard, the President of the World Packaging Organization, and the session will be presented in English. Followed by Mr. Ahmed Gaber, the Chairman of the Chamber of Printing and Packaging Industries Egypt, and the session will be presented in Arabic. And finally, Ms. Soha Atallah, the Vice President of the World Packaging Organization and the President of ProPak, and the session will be presented in Arabic. Also, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is designed to be interactive, and towards the end of our webinar, we'll be glad to answer your questions. So we encourage you to type your question into the text box located to the right of the presentation window, or click the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and specify which speaker you're asking the question to. And now, Professor P, over to you.
Well, thank you very much. I just need to get to the next slide. Well, this is wonderful to be with you, and greetings all the way from way down under in Australia. What a privilege it is to share certain of my vision in relation to sustainability in a COVID-19 world. And I start off by showing this beautiful beach. And I'm sure that many of you would clearly know where this may be because of the animal that's lying on the beach. But I have to say that this is not always the case, simply because what we are finding, and I'm having difficulty in moving the slide to the next slide, and simply because this is what we are seeing in different parts of the world. This particular one is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch that lies between California and Hawaii, and is rather big. It's bigger than 3 times the size of France. Now, you know, 100 years ago, Mahatma Gandhi said there's enough on the planet for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And how true this is today. Nothing has changed, because we are a fairly greedy society. I do apologize for the delay in switching to the next slide. Maybe it's a slow process from Australia to Egypt. So if one looks at the future in terms of sustainable packaging, then we're doing lots and lots of good things. Material lightweighting, reducing, recycling, all these good things. However, what we are finding is that we need to empower our consumers because they are the future. And we need to educate them and equip them so that the next generation can take over from us. I need the next slide. So if one looks at a supply chain in terms of the customer, and who is the customer? If I look at this slide in front of us, then one can see that the customer is every person in that supply chain, even though there may be 10 or 15 different people from A to Z. If one looks at the coal supply chain in particular, then we have this fluctuation moving out of the ideal temperatures. And this does affect the products that we are moving across the world. As soon as they move out of this band, potentially what will happen is the food is damaged. And that is one of the reasons why we are finding a lot of food waste. And some of you might know that the food waste at the moment is near 35%. Remy, can you move the slide to the next one, maybe? It's certainly not working from here. So, Remy, I will tell you every time to move it. In that way, it'll work better. So leave it there for now. Okay, so this particular image that you're seeing in front of you is very confronting. It's very confronting in a post-COVID-19 or in a COVID-19 world. Because all that fruit, and this is how we bought fruit and vegetables and have always bought it across the world. However, what we are finding now is a focus. A focus, is this acceptable? Next slide, please. If one looks at this slide across the world, we are seeing vegetables and fruit all over the world. No, back one. We can find fruit and vegetables anywhere, anytime in the world. And the only thing that allows one to be able to do this is packaging. So packaging takes it from a fruit or veggie that is unprotected to a protected item that is now being able to have a shelf life of far more than a fresh fruit or fresh vegetable, and purely by packaging. Next slide. Next slide, there we are. All right, so if one looks at this slide, and how does this slide impact on our situation as we find it today? In 2010 already, the UN predicted that we were on a path to requiring 3 Earths. And we clearly know there are not 3 Earths, there's only one. And so we need to be able to do something about this and to have a better sustainable society and have less impact on our natural resources. And if we embark on the various programs around the world, then we can revert by 2050 back to 1 Earth. Next slide. So the population as of today is 7.8 billion, and population has a direct impact on packaging. There is no getting away from that. Direct impact. Next slide, please. So what are the challenges that we are faced in this world as we look at it today? Next slide. A COVID-19 environment. And looking at the numbers as late as today, I can see there is a huge increase across the globe in the last 24 hours. And this is really, really worrying. And now, what impact does this have on packaging? And what is packaging going to do about this? Next slide. So what we are finding that really the packaging demand is expected to move through 3 phases during this outbreak. How long the outbreak will last, we do not know. But phase 1 is that initial shock. And that was about 1 week, maybe a bit more because it moved across the country, but across the world. But as it moved across the world, so each country had this initial shock. In phase 2, which they predict should be about 1 year, here we are looking at countries or regions as they bring the pandemic under control. And as we look at it today, we are 6 months into COVID-19. And so we've got a long way to go. There are many predictions that we are not going to see much improvement for the next 12 months, which means that's 18 months in total. That is phase 2. Phase 3 is the rebound, when we expect to see packaging demand gradually return to what we were used to in 2019. Next slide. So some of the areas that has had a huge impact. One is, of course, we're still recycling, we're still reusing, we're repurposing, but the home, where items are brought into the home delivery items for food across the world has increased enormously. And that has an impact on packaging because there's been a surge for certain types of packaging for all these home deliveries. Next slide. And another area that we are seeing is all of a sudden, you recall the picture that I showed earlier on of all those exposed fruit and vegetables. What we are seeing now in the supermarkets, everything is closed up. Everything is now packaged. So that's increased the use of packaging, but it also increased the price. And this is what we are seeing merging across the world as we see it. Next slide. Next slide. There we go. Hold it there. Then one looks at the bags, reuse bags or single-use bags. Now, there's been a bit of a trend away from the reused bags back into single-use bags, non-returnable. And the reason for that is because this cross-contamination of bringing your bags back from your home that could well have been exposed to COVID-19. We're finding the same thing happening in coffee cups. Now, in past few years, we had coffee cups being reused, what we call in some countries as keep cups. And there's been a move away from keep cups back into the old traditional coffee cups from coffee bars. And so there's been this surge in one direction, and now it's slowly moving back to what it used to be. Next slide. These are challenges that are certainly that we will be faced with in a post-COVID-19 scenario. How do we move back? And so in principle, the packaging is getting a lot of bad publicity and has been, but now probably in some areas, yes, there have been really good things coming about the packaging. It's protecting us from COVID-19. But in the negative side of it, we are seeing a reintroduction of items where we had moved away from the single-use to a reusable bag. We moved away from single-use cups of coffee to a keep cup type. And this has been a drive back in the opposite direction. at the end of the day, packaging remains part of the solution and not the problem. Next slide, please. And so I cannot stress more that we need to educate, equip, and empower our consumers of the future if we want to address issues like a pandemic situation like we're in at the moment. Who knows when there will be another pandemic? There may well be another one in our lifetime, but we need to prepare. And how do we prepare? But by educating, by equipping, and by empowering at a primary level. This image that you're seeing on the screen at the moment, this is grade 1. And this is where we need to target our focus. Educate the little ones. They are the future of our society. Be it in a post-pandemic situation or not, let us be prepared. Next slide, and thank you. So focusing on the people, and in particular on our future generations, we can achieve sustainability in a post-COVID-19 world. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pierre, for the very fruitful insights. And now, Mr. Ahmed Gaber.
Hello. هو الثاني عليه فلوس.
Mr. Ahmed Gaber.
ايوه.
Yes, over to you.
هو انا مش شايف البرزنتيشن. قال لك ايه يا جماعه؟ طب احنا معلش طبعا ايوه. والناس دول كويسين هناخد فلوسنا. حلو.
مستر احمد جابر، احنا شايفينك، تقدر حضرتك تبتدي.
طب انا مش شايف البرزنتيشن بعد اذنك. طيب ابدا من
حضرتك شايف البرزنتيشن كده؟
تمام.
اتفضل.
احنا النهارده هنتكلم عن صناعه التعبئه والتغليف وتاثير الكوفيد 19 على صناعه التعبئه والتغليف. فاحنا مبدئيا اول بنقول ان زي مقدمه يعني كيف يؤثر الفيروس على قطاع صناعه التعبئه والتغليف، كيف يمكن لصناعه التعبئه والتغليف ان توجه تاثير ازمه فيروس كورونا، وكيف ستقوم ازمه كوفيد 19 بتغيير بعض الاتجاهات الضخمه في صناعه التعبئه والتغليف. دي المحاور الرئيسيه اللي هنتكلم فيها النهارده، يمكن هم 3 محاور. فالاول لو اتكلمنا في المحور الاول اللي هو كيف يؤثر الفيروس على قطاع صناعه التعبئه والتغليف. اولا احنا بنؤكد دايما ان يعد قطاع التعبئه والتغليف من القطاعات الاقل تضررا من جائحه فيروس كورونا. من المتوقع ان يكون تاثير ازمه فيروس كورونا على صناعه التعبئه والتغليف ممتزجا بين ارتفاع الطلب لانواع تغليف معينه وفي الوقت نفسه انخفاض بل انعدام الطلب على بعض الانواع، اللي هو زي ما بنقول اللي هو تغيير الفكر او تغيير النمط بتاع صناعه التعبئه والتغليف. هناك طلب كبير على العبوات البلاستيك المرنه وعلى علب الكرتون المستخدمه في الادويه ومنتجات الالبان والمنتجات الغذائيه والمطهرات واقنعه الورد وخلافه من الحاجات اللي بقت اكثر استخداما في الفتره اللي فاتت في لمواجهه او مجابهه الفيروس. لقد تراجع طلب باقي انواع التغليف بخلاف ما سبق ذكره مثل منتجات العنايه الشخصيه والالكترونيات. طبعا طبيعي ان احنا زي ما شايفين في السلايد طبيعي ان طبعا الالكترونيكس والحاجات اللي هي دلوقتي في الطلب قل عليها جدا في ظل الازمه، لان طبعا النمط الاستهلاكي بتاع المستهلك نفسه اختلف. علاوه على ذلك طبعا تم الغاء وتاجيل معظم المؤتمرات والمعارض المختصه بالبضاعه والتغليف، وكان على راسهم طبعا انترباك في اوروبا في المانيا اللي هم كان مقرر لهم 2020 وتاجلوا ل 2021، وده برضه اثر بالسلب على طبعا على التقدم في السوق. المحور الثاني اللي بنتكلم فيه اللي هو كيف يمكن لصناعه التعبئه والتغليف ان تواجه تاثير ازمه فيروس كورونا، وده الهدف هو التفكير بشكل عام في كيفيه توزيع العواقب السلبيه وسعه النطاق جراء انتشار الفيروس. يجب ان يكون تسريح العماله هو الاختيار الاخير. طبعا احنا دايما هنا في مصر او في اي حته في العالم بننادي بان نحافظ على العماله بتاعتنا، وخاصه العماله المدربه، لان دي هتبقى مشكله لو فقدناهم عشان نرجع تاني نرجعهم لسوق العمل. يمكن ان تبدا معركه من اجل هزيمه الكوفيد 19 ايضا في التاثير على خيارات التغيير من التصميمات واختيار الانواع التي تعالج بشكل واضح نظافه وسلامه المستهلك. على سبيل المثال استخدام تلك التي تقلل من احتمال بقاء الفيروس على سطح الهواء. طبعا احنا بنتابع بشكل دوري ان في بعض المنتجات الفيروس بيقعد عليها او بيستمر عليها مده اطول، وعندنا يمكن في الرسم اللي تحت اللي احنا شايفينه ان مثلا الستانلس ستيل بيقعد من يومين لثلاثه، انما هنلاقي الورق والكرتون والخشب والاقل في الاستمرار الفيروس عليها، بحيث ان هو يبقى من المنتجات الامنه لاستخدامها نتيجه انتشار هذا الفيروس. ولذلك احنا بندعو دائما لتغيير النمط بدل من استخدام البلاستيك لاستخدام الورق كبديل للبلاستيك، اولا علشان العناصر الامان في بالنسبه للبيئه، وامان بالنسبه لمواجهه او مجابهه الفيروس. كيف ستقوم ازمه انتشار وباء كورونا تغيير بعض اتجاهات صناعه التعبئه والتغليف؟ ادى التباعد الاجتماعي وحالات الاغلاق وغيرها من التدابير لمواجهه الفيروس كورونا لتعزيز التجاره الالكترونيه، وده واضح جدا في الفتره اللي فاتت، مثل التصنيف عبر الانترنت واستخدام وسائل التواصل الاجتماعي والاتصال الهاتفي عبر الانترنت والمؤتمرات عن بعد وبث مقاطع الفيديو. فده هيعمل طفره في مبيعات الشركات الى المستهلك اللي هي البي تو سي، وارتفاع ايضا في التجاره الالكترونيه بين الشركات اللي هو البي تو بي، بس كله هيبقى باستخدام التكنولوجيا الجديده. وده اللي احنا شايفينه برضو في الرسم اللي واضح قدامنا في البرزنتيشن. أوضحت بعض الدراسات الاستقصائية أن أزمة فيروس كورونا ستدفع الطلب على إنتاج وتطوير المنتجات المصنوعة من الورق والكرتون كبدائل لمجموعات متنوعة من المنتجات المصنوعة من البلاستيك والزجاج والقماش، زي ما قلت في السابقة إن طبعا إحنا الورق هيبقى أكثر استخداما في الفترة اللي جاية. التوجه الآن إلى إنتاج منتجات غير تقليدية من الورق والكرتون. على سبيل المثال ويمكن إحنا معظمنا اللي شغال في مجال التعبئة والتغليف واللي شغال في مجال الورق شاف ان بدات بعض الدول تتجه لصناعه السراير الطبيه المصنوعه من الكرتون، وذلك من خلال نقل التجربه الكولومبيه او الهنديه في هذا المنتج لعده مصانع محليه، واحنا يمكن بدانا في مصر في نقل هذه التجربه، ويتم عرضها حاليا طبعا على الجهات لاستخدام الفني يمكن استخدامه في العزل المنزلي، لان طبعا ده اكثر امانا للمرضى واكثر امانا للبيئه كمان، لان التخلص منه هيكون بشكل اسهل واحسن. برضو في شفنا بعض الفواصل المستخدمه بين المكاتب تصنيع انتشار الفيروس، بين عاملين فضلا عن بعض الحاجات الدينيه زي سجاده صلاه والدولاب وحاجات اكثر من استخدام الورق، وده بيؤكد ان النمط بتاع التفكير نفسه اختلف تماما في التفكير في صناعه الورق وصناعه التعبئه والتغليف، ان هو يبدا يخش في استخدامات منزليه واستخدامات خاصه بالعزل المنزلي والعزل الطبي ولمواجهه الفيروس. ان تفشي فيروس كورونا عالميا سيكون له تاثير واضح على التغيير ليس فقط في صناعه التعبئه والتغليف ولكن ايضا على نمط الاستهلاك واقعا، والتي ستعطي مستقبلا للمنتجات المصنوعه من الورق التي يتم استخدامها لمره واحده كبديل لكثير من المنتجات المستخدمه حاليا لحد من انتشار الفيروس. لكثير من لحد من انتشار الفيروس القضاء عليه، فهناك حث المطاعم على استبدال ادوات الطعام المستخدمه حاليا باخرى مصنوعه من الورق. اما عن تعبئه المواد الغذائيه فيجب تغيير النمط المتبع حاليا في استخدام الاكياس المصنوعه من الورق والكرتون في التعبئه كبديل للاكياس المستخدمه حاليا، مما تتوافق ايضا مع الاتجاه العالمي لحد الاكياس البلاستيكيه وتبديلها بالورقيه للحفاظ على البيئه وليس فقط لحد انتشار الفيروس. شكرا على المتابعه، وانا
useful information. And now we move to answering some of the received questions from our audience. And the first question is addressed to Professor Pierre. The question is how food and beverage packaging packages or manufacturers can navigate to the new normal. Question to Professor Pierre. How can the private sector, the government, and independent organizations work together to overcome the current challenges of the packaging industry? Professor Pierre, over to you.
Well, yeah, thank you. Can you hear me, Matat?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Can you hear me? Okay, good.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that question. It's a very challenging scenario across the world. It works well in some countries and not so well in other countries. We need, as an industry, to work as closely as we can with our own governments of our own country, but also internationally. And I have to say that the World Packaging Organization goes out of their way to meet with governments of various countries as we continue to move around the world. Clearly, at the moment, we're not moving around the world, so we can't liaise with governments around the world either. However, this is the time to breach that gap and for industry to reach out to governments so that they both embark on the same path to a resolution that is suitable for all parties within that country. It is paramount that hand of friendship is reached out. Otherwise, we are not going to achieve good outcomes, and the impact will be worse than ever before. So I encourage industry to put out their hand, and hopefully governments will come on board. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Pierre. We have a question for Mr. Ahmed Gader. سؤال بيقول هل سيشهد قطاع التعليب والتغليف طفرة في مصر في السنوات المقبلة؟ حضرتك سمعت السؤال؟
تمام كده. هو قطاع التعبئة والتغليف خلينا نوضح ان هو قطاع خدمي صناعي بشكل اساسي، يعني هو بيخدم الصناعات الاخرى المختلفة سواء كان غذائية، دوائية، هندسية، او خدمة برضه خدمة الجديد اللي احنا كنا بنتكلم فيه اللي هو خدمة المطاعم والحياة السياحية. اعتقد ان هو بالنمو الصناعي اللي بيحصل في مصر هيتبعه اكيد نمو في قطاع التعبئه والتغليف بشكل اساسي، لان طبعا قطاع التعبئه والتغليف بينمو مع النمو الصناعي. فانا شايف ان مصر في تركيز في الفتره اللي فاتت، ولو كنا شفنا النهارده الصبح يمكن الرئيس كان بيفتتح بعض المشروعات وكان في برزنتيشن لرئيس الوزراء، ورئيس الوزراء كان بيتكلم بشكل اساسي على الاتجاه نحو الصناعه في مصر والاكتفاء الذاتي من الصناعه ومن الانتاج الغذائي، وبرضه الانتاج الغذائي مرتبط بصناعه التعبئه والتغليف سواء كان في التصدير او السوق المحلي اللي هي الزراعه، يعني اللي هي الخضروات والفاكهه. فانا اعتقد ان شاء الله الفتره اللي جايه هنتخلص من الاثار بتاعت الكورونا، ومع الاهتمام بقطاع الصناعه هيبقى بالتبعيه هيبقى فيه اهتمام بقطاع التعبئه والتغليف ان شاء الله، وفي نمو لقطاع التعبئه والتغليف مع النمو الصناعي المنتظم.
شكرا Mr. Ahmed Gaber. I have another question for Ms. Soha. The question says, will COVID affecting negatively on the sustainability plans around the world as the need to use more disposable packaging material? Should I repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Will COVID affecting negatively on the sustainability plans around the world as the need to use more disposable packaging material?
أنا هذا الشيء مانيش شايفته. أنا بالعكس مثل ما فرجى بيير بالسلايدز تبعه في وعي أكثر. يعني هو كل العالم كوفيد حاسينه إنه جاي من البوليوشن، من الإيرث، من يعني كل هالثورة والغضب اللي صار من العالم علينا نحن، على المصانع، على حالنا حتى، إنه واي ليه منكب بالنهر، ليه منكب البحر. فبالعكس أنا شايفة sustainability حتتحسن بعد الكوفيد 19 لأنه العالم صاروا they are reusing their own. يعني بالعكس بيروحوا على ستاربكس بيجيبوا المج تبعهم، بيشربوا القهوة بالمج تبعهم، بالأكل عم بيخففوا disposable packaging لأنه they don't trust بقى anymore. فبالعكس أنا شايفة الموضوع عكسي، حتزيد السستينابيلتي لأنه الوعي عند الكونسيومر زاد كتير بهذا الموضوع.
Thank you. We have another question for Ms. Soha. هل يتم توفير دورات تدريبية للطلبة عن أساليب التغليف والتعبئة الجديدة؟
أكيد، بس بدكم we are ready. نحن كليبونباك يعني وك WPO we are ready to provide any kind of training. ونحن حنعمل soon webinar على مع WPO بشهر أغسطس and we gonna يعني حيكونوا free webinar. وإن شاء الله بس يرجع نقدر نسافر ready to come also to provide any kind of training or capacity building on packaging للطلبة وغير الطلبة.
Thank you. I'm just waiting for our audience to send a few more questions. I'm making sure that we're answering most of the questions received. Okay, apparently that's all the time we have for questions for today. I'd like to thank our speakers and attendees for being with us today. Thank you to our partners, the World Packaging Organization, the Chamber of Printing and Packaging Industries, and ProPak. In order to keep providing better webinars, I'd like to have your feedback. So within the next 4 hours, you'll receive a personalized follow-up email with a survey link to fill in, as well as today's recorded session. Please invite your colleagues and peers who may have been not able to listen to the event live. On behalf of our guests, Professor Pierre Pienaar, Mr. Ahmed Gaber, and Ms. Soha Atallah, I am Medhat Shawi. Thank you for your time, and we're looking forward to seeing you in our upcoming webinars. Have a great day.
Thank you, guys. It was nice seeing you all.
شكرا.
Bye.